In Chapter 13, we're going to cover the cardiovascular system, and specifically we're going to be looking at just the heart in this chapter. So just an overview of the cardiovascular system. It contains three parts. So the three parts are the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. And the function of the cardiovascular system is transport. So it will transport all kinds of things around the body. The location of the heart is inside the thoracic cavity. The heart is about the size of your fist, and it's a little bit shoved over onto your left side. And the heart is surrounded by the pericardial sac. And up on the top right corner, you can actually see the pericardial sac. So it's actually very thin. And inside, there's a small amount of pericardial fluid, which is there to help decrease the friction and rubbing as the heart is contracting and relaxing and moving. And that will prevent it from rubbing. So if we look at the heart, there's three heart wall layers. On the outside of the heart wall, there is the epicardium. So remember, epi means above or on top of. The epicardium is made out of connective tissue. The thickest part of the heart wall is the myocardium. So remember, myo means muscle. And we're going to be spending all of our time looking at the myocardium because that's what's going to be contracting and pumping the blood. And then the inner layer of the heart wall is called the endocardium. So the endocardium is made out of epithelial tissue. For the anatomy of the heart, there are four chambers. We have two atria on top, and then we have two ventricles on the bottom. So we basically have two pumps side by side. So we have the right side of the heart, which is going to pump blood to the lungs to get oxygenated, and then left side of the heart is going to pump the oxygenated blood out to the tissues. In between the atria and the ventricles, we have atrioventricular or AV valves. There's one on each side. And then we also have two semilunar valves. There's a semilunar valve between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. And there's another semilunar valve here between the left ventricle and the aorta. The valves are really important because they're going to prevent the blood from flowing backwards. In between the ventricles, we have the interventricular septum. So remember, septum means wall. The base of the heart is actually up here on the top where all the blood vessels are going in and out. And then the apex of the heart is this pointed part on the bottom of the heart. And then this is just a picture that just shows you a lot more of the anatomy. And if you have not had anatomy yet, it would be a really good idea to review this picture and familiarize yourself with where things are. The next part of the cardiovascular system, so besides the heart, we've got the blood vessels, and we're going to be talking about these in Chapter 14. So we have three different types of blood vessels. So the arteries are going to be conducting blood away from the heart. Capillaries, which I have a picture of here on the bottom, that's where we're going to be exchanging between the blood and the tissues. And then the veins are going to be conducting blood back towards the heart. And then the third part of the cardiovascular system, besides the heart and blood vessels, is we have the blood, which we're going to talk about in Chapter 15. So the blood contains three different types of cells and then the plasma. So the three cell types in the blood are the erythrocytes or red blood cells, and their function is to carry oxygen in the blood. And if you look on the blood smear on the bottom right here, you can see that most of these cells here are red blood cells. The leukocytes, those are your white blood cells. Leuko means white. And there are a number of different types of white blood cells, which we'll talk about in Chapter 15 and then also later on in the immune system. There's a couple of different white blood cells here in the blood smear. We've got some eosinophils, lymphocytes, and then also a neutrophil that's pictured. The leukocytes, or white blood cells, are important because they're there for defense and they're part of your immune system. The third type of blood cell are platelets, and platelets are involved in blood clotting. And on the blood smear, you can see the platelet here. They're very small. They're actually just fragments of cells. And then the last part of the blood is the plasma, which that's the liquid part of the blood. So remember, the plasma is part of your extracellular fluid. So remember, the extracellular fluid, we divided into two compartments. We had the plasma and the interstitial fluid.